Unlearning Unlimited. What? Unlearning Unlimited.
All right, well, hello, welcome to the podcast, Unlearn and Unlimited. My name is Dr. Sito Narcisse. I'm your host. Super excited for our first podcast. We have a cool host, well, not host, but a cool visitor that's with us that we're excited about. Our guest. I'll talk to you a little bit about her, but right before we get into that, I just want to give you a little bit about the podcast. Our podcast is called Unlearn Unlimited. What we try to do is to talk about things that are, one, against the status quo, two, around the clash between education and culture, and number three, we want to hear about what's really going on, not what people will say or what they think, but the experiences of what people are actually going through, and also talk about solutions and opportunities and things that deal with all the new things around technology, AI, or whatever things that people are going on. And so most of the folks we always talk to are people who are actually practitioners in the work, who can tell you about everything that's actually going on. And so we're really excited about that. So we'll get right to it. I'm super excited about our guest. One of our first guests is Azalia Speight, who is the CEO of Breakthrough Professional Services, also the chief of schools of Maya Angelou out in Washington, D.C., and
Yes.
Has all types of degrees, more than I can tell you. Nyack University, Georgetown University, Penn State. Listen, I don't need to validate and credentialize you anymore, girl. You got all the stuff.
Thank you.
But let's do this.
Yes.
Instead of me reading your resume and all that stuff and telling people, I want you to tell us something about yourself that nobody knows, because I always believe the best person that can tell you about themselves is themselves.
Hey.
A little bit about yourself.
Okay, so something about me nobody knows. It's going to be tough because some people probably know, but I am the descendant of Panamanian roots. I am fluent in Spanish. Sí, yo hablo español. Yes, my whole culture is all West Indian, Caribbean. I love that. That is me. And so you can imagine when you couple that with lots of education and just varied world experiences, you get somebody like myself, like you, like Sandra, and all these other people we know who are just extremely versatile, who love the world, who love people, who try everything, who are willing to take risks. And I think that's something about me most people may not know right off the bat. I can show up a little stoic and a little serious, but I love life and I love culture. And I love my roots.
So let me ask you a few questions, because we always talk about education, but we also talk a little bit about culture. So,
absolutely.
So for Puerto Ricans, they call them Boricuas. So Panamanians, they call them
Panameñas.
Good, okay.
That's simple.
And I'm sure. So did you grow up in the DMV area, in New York, in Florida? Where did you grow up?
In the DMV area, born and raised in DC. We go to Panama at least once a year.
Okay.
Stopped, as we started to get older, get into high school and get into college. And then, that thing happens. You graduate from college, you get a job, you start living life, and you scratch your head and you're like, there's more to it. I want to go back to my roots. So as I got older, we started traveling a lot more, and Panama has been a destination we go regularly just to connect with family, connect with culture, and to connect with our history.
So, so tell me a little bit. So how did you get into education, right? So
Dr. Rose. Dr. Rose. So my senior year of high school, I had this fabulous African-American studies teacher who, was just amazing in the classroom. But then she took some time and she mentored me, and we decided, because I was going to be a first generation college goer, Dr. Rose understood what that meant for me and my family. And so she asked my parents' permission to take me on a few college tours. We went on a few tours. We settled on Penn State. She pushed me. She encouraged me. Went to Penn State, spent my 4 years there. And a few days before graduation, I found myself in my dorm room just crying, bawling my eyes out, because I didn't know what I was going to do next. And so I graduated. I came home. She was checking on me, crying. And she's like, girl, relax. You need to teach. And I was like, me teach? She's like, yes, you can do it. She's like, let's talk about what you studied in college. Let's talk about what you've done over these last 4 years. And so we settled on foreign language. She connected me with the school board. I went in, did the application, did the interview. She had me show up to the school. I show up to the school, and the principal's like, "Yep, you're the one. You're hired. See you in 2 weeks." And my mind is blown because education was never in my trajectory. But because of Dr. Sandra Rose, I am the educator that I am today. It was not a part of my plan, but it certainly was the right plan for me. So shout out to Dr. Rose for that. But that's how I ended up in education.
Isn't that always interesting, right? When you think about like where people come from, it always sometimes people think it's like just the education, but it really comes down to a connection of a person or something that some type of experience that they had, right, to get them to where they want to be, right? Or what they want to dream to become, right? I always agree the same thing. I don't know if I don't know from where I came from or the exposure I even had, I would even be where I am today, right? And I think it's important around that. So, well, let's get right into it. So, a couple of questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
So our world is Unlearn Unlimited. So we always start off with the same question first and the same question last. So,
Got it.
so tell me, in all your experience in education, what would you say is something that you think you should have not learned? What should be unlearned, right? Because with all these years of experiences that you've had, you've done a lot of great things. But what would you say, like now, after going through all this stuff, we learned that, right?
I mean, I think I am doing it now, and I've done it in the past, but I have had to unlearn this notion that you cannot take risks and you must do everything by the book. The way education has evolved over the years, we have no choice but to take risks. And I think I've learned that the hard way, but I certainly have been unlearning that over these last few years.
And so now that you're in that space where you begin to unlearn that, and you're at a very high level, right, in terms of supporting and managing people, like, what do you say sometimes is the barriers you think now that you have to kind of help people get through as you try to push, whether it's helping them work with community, with kids, with schools, or technology, or whatever that is?
I think there's several barriers. I think the first barrier is mindset. Depending on who the educator is, where they have come from, what their past experiences have been, their mindset kind of shapes and molds the way that they're going to approach the work. Secondly, I think this focus on metrics and mandates has really hampered some of the creativity, the innovation, and of course the risk taking that could be done in education. So I would say those two things: really having to meet certain markers and tricks, and then the ability for folks to really shift their mindset.
So culture has played a huge impact on education these days. As you watch culture wars and all the stuff that we go through now, and people are picking sides about every little thing, every subject you can see, right? It doesn't matter whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, wherever. How would you say that plays out in the world that you're living in right now?
Oh, that's a heavy question. It plays out in various ways. And do we want to talk about it from like a classroom instruction perspective? Do we want to talk about it from a broader education leadership perspective?
Yeah, I mean, anything that you think would resonate with people, right? We're talking to whether it's educators or average Joes or people trying to learn the world, right? Like, how would you say,
For
they say it
sure.
in different ways?
I think that culture is absolutely important, and we have a responsibility to use current events to help shape the way that our youth look at life, how they problem solve, how they synthesize and analyze. But we have also allowed culture to take over what we believe as educators is most important when it comes to teaching and learning, right? And so I love all of the videos of classroom management and organization where you have teachers who are singing and dancing and doing arts and rapping with their kids, and all of that is great. But I often step back and say, I wonder if all of those students are reading on grade level. I wonder if all of those students understand that they can take risks with their teaching and learning, and know that it's okay to make mistakes. But as you continue trying harder, you can do hard things. I wonder how many students are performing above grade level. I wonder how many students understand how they can utilize current events and real world situations and apply them to algebra and apply them to biology. So I often wonder how we are using culture far more deeper than we could be. I think we're struggling there. We do it on a surface level, but we're not really utilizing it to help stretch our students' thinking, to stretch our teachers' teaching, and to stretch the overall learning.
How do you think families are interpreting that process as well, or community members that you engage with?
You know what? It's really interesting. I was talking to one of my school leaders who shared with me, the process for orientation this year and meeting with so many parents. And she was sharing that she spent a lot of time talking about school culture, talking about the great things that are happening, talking about how we prepare students for life after high school, talking about the importance of making sure that they have a plan post graduation. And interestingly enough, one parent pulls the principal aside and said, all of those things are great. This is a lovely school. This is where I want my son to go. But I haven't really heard you talk about how you're going to stretch him. How are you going to take him from that sixth grade reading level to the ninth grade reading level? How are you going to get him to not be afraid of difficult math problems? These are the things that I'm struggling with at home. And these are the things I really need help in. And in a very transparent and reflective conversation with the school leader, she said, of course, those things are important to me. And of course, those are things that I focus on. But I'm starting to feel like I'm missing what parents really want. And so I say all that to say that we have a group of families and parents who really, really want to get back to what is important when it comes to sending their children to school. They want to get back to ensuring that we are deeply teaching students what they need to succeed in life. And I am proud of all of the parents nowadays who are challenging educators, right? Who are getting in the classroom and really trying to make sure they understand what the teacher is teaching so that they can go home and reinforce it in the classroom. I'm proud of parents who are showing up in classes and say, hey, I think you graded this wrong. My child may have done it differently, but they got the answer right. And so we are moving to a place now where I'm finding so many families really want to ensure that their children are being set up for success in life.
So now, like in America, right, there's this mismatch between like education and the real world, right? Because you hear different people say different things, right? And kids go to school for, at least in the K-12, so I would really say more like 13 years now, because, kids try
Right?
to go from the early childhood all the way through. And there's always this question about how well do they do? Are we really preparing them for the workforce? Are they getting enough technology? AI is playing a huge part in that now with all those things. Like, how do you, like, I guess in your space, think people should be navigating that, whether you are in the system for education or you are a parent at home or you're a community person trying to support, like help me understand or help us kind of understand, like, what would you say is like the 3 or 4 basic things they should be thinking about, right? And also not to be scared of, right? So this I would say is like, what should they not be like, not be learning, right? In some way, so they could be able to do things and be unlimited about their approach.
This is a really, really great question. I'm going to try to answer it from several different perspectives. In the work that I do, I'm responsible for supporting and coaching, managing, supervising school leaders and their teams and growing their schools, right? Growing their schools academically, growing them socially, culturally, all of those things. And so you need staff to do that, right? And so I think about some of the things that our staff present to us, and it kind of makes me scratch my head and wonder, all right, for this generation coming up, what do we need to ensure that they have? And so when I think about the generation that we are currently educating and preparing for the real world, some of the things that I don't want them to learn, I don't want them to learn how to take shortcuts and everything. This society is teaching from the new way that we do math. We're teaching students how to take shortcuts, and I get it, but you can't live this life on shortcuts. You can't succeed in life taking shortcuts. AI is a great tool, but it promotes taking shortcuts. Even I myself sometimes have to stop and say, no, challenge your brain to figure it out. Do a little bit of research on your own before you run right to AI. And so I think making sure that we aren't teaching our students, our youth, how to take shortcuts is going to be critical as we move into this next generation of young employees, and hopefully they'll be employers. I also think we really have to slow down a little bit and make sure that we are focusing on and teaching emotional regulation. We're finding that in adults that is missing, and it's missing in some of the adults that are educating our children. And so really taking time to teach that emotional regulation, teaching boundaries, teaching responsibility, teaching our students and youth how to take ownership, teaching how to be reflective of decisions that they made and how those decisions impacted the work that they're doing, teaching them that they can do hard things, that they can take risks too, that they can push themselves beyond certain certain limits. I mean, I can assume that that's how you and myself and others may have grown up. And we all, as a parent, I see the difference in even how I'm raising my son. Oh, I turned out to be a pretty decent adult. Some of those things my parents did really did work for me. Let me go
Yeah,
back.
right.
Let me go back to some of those things.
Well, right now they're I guess the question would be like they're saying there's a big disconnect between what kids are learning in school and what the workforce is demanding, right? So you hear a lot of folks talking about, well, let's create schools where we're getting kids to, focus on particular careers or pick a pathway or something like that, right? I guess the question to dive deeper is from your lens as you're working with school and kids every day, do you think that approach is something that's been good, bad, or challenging, or has been hard for educators to figure out? Where do you think the gap is?
All of the above. It has been hard, it's been good, it's been challenging. There are gaps. I think there's value in understanding what is happening in the workforce and in society, what will happen 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and preparing students for that. I think we are challenged by the metrics and the markers you have to reach in K through 12 education, right? And so we have to figure out how we prepare them for life after high school, how we prepare them for college and the workforce, but we also have to make sure we're hitting certain benchmarks now, right? So that's the challenge. I think we also are sometimes we're thinking too broad and too innovative and not focusing on some of the traditional jobs and career opportunities that will always be with us. Everyone is not built to be your gamer or to be your next engineer. We are going to need people who want to stay in the medical field, right? So how do we continue to push nursing? How do we continue to push the medical field? How do we continue to push law? You're always going to need people who can represent and advocate for others. You're going to need people who have a heart for the rest of society, for the downtrodden and those who are struggling in life. You need people in service oriented jobs. And so when I say service oriented, I'm talking your teachers, your firefighters, I'm talking about your researchers, I'm talking about individuals who can be creative and innovative and problem solve for the rest of society. And so there are some disconnects there because we are working to meet the markers and metrics, but we're not taking the time out to really determine 10 or 15 years from now, what kind of workforce is there going to be and what will the needs be? Let's focus on that and not just right now.
If you listen to like people from the workforce who want kids to come and work for them, depending on where they are and what city and what part of the country, they're always sharing that there's some type of gap that's happening in schools, right? And then you always hear things like who benefits from keeping these things the same, right? The question is, if something isn't working, we usually try to fix it, right? But in public education, which we've heard years and years is that the system has a problem, they're stuck, they can't change fast enough, those things. From a practitioner standpoint, with the experiences that you have had, what would you say are things that people should think about or things that are true or not true, right? It's just narratives that's being said, right? What would you say is from your perspective how you would interpret that?
I think that's a great question. And as I mentioned in my response to the previous question, we're dealing with a current workforce of individuals who I believe they missed out on getting a few things that would prepare them for being successful in the workplace, especially preparing them to be successful in education settings. And so some of the things I think the current workforce is missing is the ability to be flexible and less rigid, the ability to manage and regulate their own emotions. I think we are missing the need for folks to be willing to work together and collaboratively in teams, understanding different mindsets, different points of view, recognizing that we all bring value to the table. We can create an amazing product if we yield to the strengths that are within the group and not trying to be, the one person who can do it all or the one person who doesn't want to do anything, right? And so I'm seeing some of those gaps in the current workforce or the adults that we have now. And I see that we are missing the mark as we are educating our youth now on how to prepare life to interact with other people when they get out in the workforce, right? What does it mean to sit and grapple with things in a group? My previous teacher, Dr. Rose, would give us homework in high school and say, Don't just go home and do the homework. Go to your friend's house, sit at their coffee table and grapple with the problem together.
Right.
Plan out how you are going to
Right.
present this together. Go to a coffee shop, sit at a park, sit together. And so we are really missing that component of interpersonal interactions that really make for amazing workplaces. Something that we really have to consider as we move forward in education. And I want to go a little deeper. I do believe that some parts of our education system are quite antiquated, but I strongly believe that a lot of that is due to money, right? There's money in failing and struggling schools. There is money in schools or in education systems or counties rather, or even states, where we find that there is a huge divide between various groups and demographics. And so sometimes there is a benefit to the powers that be that have the ability to not pay, but to fund various programs as long as we are not meeting expectations.
Do you think that to that point, race, class, and culture plays a huge dynamic on who gets opportunities, who doesn't get opportunities, or who learns, who doesn't learn? Like, how do you think about those things? Because those are always things that are brought up when things are not happening in a particular way.
Hmm.
How
You
do you
know what?
think?
It's interesting. The answer to your question is yes. All of that plays a part. But speaking from my experience, I am blessed to live and work in the DMV area, which is a very culturally and diverse, rich area. And so most of our divide is seen between, the lower class, the middle class, and our upper class. It's more classes and not too much color, race, and culture. And so that is where we kind of see it. And we all know the schools that have the lowest test scores get all the Title I funds, right? The schools who have the highest student performance data, they have stronger PTOs and PTAs, and they have endowments, and they have philanthropists that are giving to them, and they can do amazing things. But the schools that are struggling don't have those same options because all of their money goes to making sure the data is increased.
Right, right. Well, let me ask this. So I'm going to pivot us a little bit, because we talked a lot about like what's going on in schools, the dynamics, the gaps between workforce and schools. What does unlearning look like? You seem to be someone that's been, when you look at your success in the work that you've done, you have been able to unlearn some things to be able to learn whatever you had to learn to be successful in the spaces. Tell me a little bit, like, what would you say, like, what does it look like if you have somebody trying to really think outside the box or really to go to different spaces? What's one, the biggest misconception about that? And two, what would you say, like, what are some steps you recommend that they should be thinking about?
That's a really good question. I'm going to try to give a clear and concise answer on the spot. I think when it comes to unlearning, the most important thing you can do is learn more. Oftentimes, when we think about unlearning, we focus on what we need to unlearn, and we just want to erase that. We want to eliminate that. But I challenge folks to learn more about that. And the more you learn about that, that is research based, that is proven, that you can connect to real world examples and experiences, it begins to minimize what doesn't work anymore, and it helps you unlearn. And so I'll give you a quick example. We know that even in education today, really working with opportunity youth, we have been taught that they have to be separated, they have to go to a different school, they have to have different programs, they have to do all of these things because of the various labels that they have. And so a way of unlearning that for me was to really study and research more about what has worked for youth who are considered opportunity youth. And for me, what has worked for them is making sure they have a double dose of what the average student is getting, right? Making sure that they are experiencing all of the things that the average student should be experiencing. And so learning more and more helps you to unlearn those things that aren't working for you or that aren't benefiting you. I think another process is you have to be reflective. You have to ask other people's perspectives and opinions, folks you trust, folks who are proven to be knowledgeable and impactful in this work, not just anybody. You want to make sure you hear from stakeholders or those who are going to be receiving whatever it is that you're putting out. And I think you have to trust yourself. You really have to trust yourself. And there's so many people who are sitting on amazing talent, on amazing gifts, on amazing input that they could add to the education, and they're just afraid to take risks. They're just really afraid to take risks.
Where do you think we should be in terms of innovation now, right? So, like, what should be the things that, we have not tapped into or you think can really help us take children and schools and broaden teachers' perspectives, communities in terms of innovation for the next level of work?
It is amazing that you're asking me this question, and I'm going to try my best to answer it. I think that we have, for all of the good that we have done, for all of the progress we have made, I don't believe we have innovated enough. And let me explain to you why. When I was in high school, my senior year in high school, I had the opportunity to take an AP psychology course via stream. It was virtual into another school across the county, another school that was probably 10 or 20 miles away. That was, I don't want to say the year, I'll say the year. That was 1998. We were doing distance learning in
Distance learning, right.
1998.
So they'd have a screen in two classrooms in two different locations can see.
Two different teachers. They are co-teaching together. We are raising our hands. We're writing answers that you can see on the screen. This was all these years ago. We were doing that, and we are still doing that. But guess what? We're not doing enough of it, even still, right? And so when I think it's like we innovated to a certain point, and we took that innovation, and then we just tweaked it a little bit. We're not thinking outside of the box like we did. We're no longer using the city or our counties and our neighborhoods like as the classrooms as we used to do. We're not giving students external learning experiences like we used to. And so it's almost like we have backtracked and we aren't utilizing those traditional strategies that have worked with some newer, more advanced and innovative strategies. I think we're missing the mark there. We have now lots of private schools that do all the wonderful things that I think public schools should be doing. So I think there is room for us to innovate
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think we have great opportunities. Now's the best time to do that.
So if you had to be unlimited, and when I say like, let's say, hey, I said, Azalia, I'm going to give you a magic wand, and you wave it, and we can do it. What would that look like to you, and what would that be?
This is a good question. And from an educator, it's probably going to sound it might be a little surprising. I think if I had a magic wand, I think I would fix the communities. I would fix the living circumstances of our most vulnerable students. I believe that in education, we have the right resources, the right tools, the right people. We just need the right vision. We need the right mission. We need the right kind of focus. But if we could eradicate the things that plague our students and don't allow them to show up school ready, I think we would make so much more impact. Of course, I'm not saying that the community and the homes are the only problem, but if we can fix those, send the students to school ready, send them to us prepared, not having to worry about the issues that plague them at home. That would be what I would wave my wand to do.
Anything else you think you could add in terms of unlimited? So you said we fix the problems of folks who come from challenging communities. What else would you say?
Um, I think that we have to find a way to move away from labeling our students. And if they have to be categorized in a certain way, removing the stigma from those labels and those categories for our students. I know that there are pockets of schools and education systems that are really, really trying to do that well. But with certain labels, we find that we are limiting our students' abilities, and our students are limitless. Students are limitless. They can achieve at high levels. They will blow your minds if you give them the tools that they need to excel. So I think removing labels, removing categories, and I'm not saying we dismiss the needs that our students have, but we shouldn't allow those needs or the lack of resources to meet those needs stop our students from excelling and progressing.
Right now, people are talking a lot about technology tools and all this stuff to help with unlimited. It sounds more like you're saying we should really be focusing not only on just those tools, but also on the human aspect of it. Is that
Absolutely, absolutely. I have a 6-year-old, and he can utilize technology in amazing ways. He's reading on a second grade level, but the things he is able to do when he gets his hand on the web browser blows my mind. And so there's no doubt that our students are ready for everything that technology is going to bring in the future. But as a parent, I have to say enough is enough, because I need you to go outside. I need you to go interact with the kids around the corner. I need you to sit here and have deep and reflective conversations with mommy and daddy. I need you to prepare to go to your grandparents' house and have a deep conversation about what you learned in school. Because if you don't, they're going to look at me like I'm not a good parent. And so really trying to find ways to get him to just be as well-rounded as possible. Technology it should not be a concern for this generation, because they got it, or the generations to come.
Is there anything else you would add in terms of being unlimited?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think more opportunities like this, not just for myself, but for various educators to really share our perspectives, because I believe there are many more of us that think the same way and feel the same way. We might be limited by the kind of work we do, or the area in which we work, or the demographics that we have to contend with, but we have the same mindsets, we have the same ideas, we have the same philosophies. And if we had opportunity to come together to problem solve, to collaborate, to innovate, I think we could do awesome things in education, especially for the students in the most underserved and marginalized areas.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I always say, if we don't challenge the system, right, then we accept, failure, because I think it's always about pushing the limits and the boundaries. And what we always talk about is, like, we want to make sure we're trying to get folks to unlearn certain things that they traditionally learn. Is to accept that, right? And then say, hey, here's the areas of unlimited. And it was great to hear your perspective and lens around that. So our big goal all the time is to try to push people in their thinking. Not necessarily that they got to agree with us, right? But at least they hear from different lenses and perspectives from people who are working in different spaces, or even whether it's families, parents, students. We're going to have a lot of different folks, people who are not in education at all, who come from an entertainment lens, or whatever that space.
Wow, yeah.
To be able to talk a little bit about education. And so we really appreciate that. So I wanted to just always like to give you the last word before I summarize them. If you had to tell any listener out there and want to leave them with a final word and say, hey, if I had to tell you here's 2 or 3 things you need to unlearn, and here's some 2 or 3 things you need to be unlimited about to go to the next space, what would that be?
I think we have to unlearn that taking risks is too risky. We have to unlearn that. I think we have to learn that there is so much value in interpersonal engagement, rather than this concept of being in a silo and just coming out when I feel like it and when I want to. So much value in that. And I think we have to relearn that we are a brother's keeper. I think we have to relearn that. I think in hard times, we get back to that. In difficult times, everyone is on board with being their brother's keeper. But from day to day, we are all focused on self. It's like every man for themselves and God for us all. We certainly need to relearn the importance of being our brother's keeper. And that may not look the same way in every situation. But for me, when it comes to education, when it comes to school leadership, when it comes to innovation, I'm thinking about what I can do to support and uplift and grow those who need it the most. So that's what I would relearn, unlearn, and need to learn. I probably mixed it up a little bit, but
It is all good. Listen, we just appreciate you taking the time
thank you.
your busy schedule to come. I'm very grateful for you to be
Thank
here,
you.
and also grateful that we want people who are unraw. I mean, you have a reputation not only being an excellent educator, but also being able to speak your truth and say, here's the thing
Thank you.
that are making a difference. And so we appreciate that. So to wrap up on our end, next time we're going to be tackling a big lie in education. People say the idea that college for all is the only path to success. Spoiler alert, I tell folks it's not, but make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on it. Until then, we appreciate you coming on, and always remember, we're here to unlearn and stay unlimited. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the invite. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.